Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. Let's take a look at a battle report between the 100 Kingdoms and the Spires for last argument. This was played recently against my buddy Chris, and it was on the scenario Decline flank. Hasn't been that long since the recent shakeup came out, changing a lot of the rules and overhauling in particular Nords and Wadroon. But of course we're playing 100 Kingdoms and Spires, two factions which haven't really had a rework in a while, although 100 Kingdoms due for a rework very soon, so we'll be keeping our eyes out for that next happy hour update. In the meantime, though, I feel like 100 Kingdoms have really been changed by two things, and one of those is the change to Hunter Cadre, making them much better than before, given that they are now medium and they have flank, and they can still get the benefits of things like the Imperial Officers, Vanguard, very, very effective. And secondarily, the change to the way that Supremacy works. So now you get the plus or minus benefit if your opponent won the roll in your previous turn, meaning that there's no penalty really for having more cards than your opponent. Therefore, more than ever, you want to go for an army list that has a lot of cards. And with that in mind, we're just going to be having a look at my army list and really trying to test that theory. So what we've got here is a rather large list because I'm taking 4 characters and what have we got, 10 regiments. Imperial Officer, a bit of a must at the moment, given that he is your way of getting the Hunter Cadre, and the Steel Legion have now become mainstays, so still trying them out. I believe it may still be better to go with Men-at-Arms, but Steel Legion, they are not the most expensive regiment in the world. They're up there, but at least you've got a unit that can fight its way out of a close combat, and Men-at-Arms aren't really great at doing that. Imperial Officer, we are trying out Art of War for the first time. This has gone through many iterations, and when it first came out, it never saw any play, and they finally got it down to a point where you can use it every turn to basically count as a blank card that just passes the turn back to your opponent, meaning that you're very likely to get the final say if you have a big army like this. So we're going to see if that actually is impactful in this game. Then down here, we're trying out the Noble Lord. Given that there's so much infantry in the army, I thought, let's give it a go. I don't love this character, but he's going to be a Warlord in this case, and will grant the reroll 6s bonus to infantry around him. The reason why I've never really loved this guy is just, in practice, like when you actually play the game, it's hard to keep the rest of your army within that bubble of influence for the reroll 6s. And if you only get it on like 2 combats, then it's just really not been worth it. I mean, the 6s turn into some successes and some failures, and it doesn't really influence the game very much. If you're in a situation where you're getting those rerolls like several turns in a row on attacks and defense, then it can add up. But most of the time, it just doesn't work. So that is the thinking here with the Noble Lord. I don't love him, but we're just going to continue to give him chances. Household Guard with the usual Armsmaster, Noble Lord, of course, with Weapon Master, Graceful Combatant, really the only 2 choices until they make the other ones more appealing, and Eccentric Fighting Style because that really stacks with the other things that he can do there. We've got a Noble Lord with absolutely no upgrades other than the default free one, and the Knights with nothing else supporting them. There's no veterans here. I feel like this is fine just because the Knights are so cheap, and with the Noble Lord supporting them, they can charge something and use their impact and clash to do some damage, but a lot of the time they're just going to be threatening a zone or scoring and giving you the mounted Squires, which I quite like, but really not the most impressive warband. And then the Mage, still a better choice than the Priest, until of course they update it and change the Priest, because she can go on the Men-at-Arms and score early game, and is just a little bit more powerful when it comes to midfield, blasting every turn with the School of Fire. Couldn't afford the Kess Farewell, which is a really useful ability for her, but other than that, that's what we've got. My opponent trying out Directorate again, and his thought is to take the double Biomancer. One of them is in the Sentinels here with Avatar Projection, the other one bringing the Siegebreaker. The thinking is that the Siegebreaker it's not been a great monster for most of its existence. It is getting better and better, and it's especially better now that you can take it as a restricted in the Biomancer's Warband, and the Directorate is probably the best army rule for it, given that you want him to be using Burnout really useful for him because every hit that he can do is precious with Smite, and having Burnout for the +1 clash is really, really useful, not to mention the speed. Everything else here, just trying to make use of new models. Obviously, he's got the Leonine Avatar in there. They're pretty cool. Really hard to get their combo off sometimes, but they can be quite useful with Hunter-Killer teams. And High Clone Executor, I believe, trying Neural Override. I've never been a massive fan of this ability, but in a clutch situation, you might find it useful. This may not be as exactless, but it's a rough approximation of it. So, we are doing a Decline Flank. This is an interesting one because every turn you can pick a zone that is that your opponent can't score from effectively, or that neither player can score from, I should say. Meaning that, realistically, with 6 little circles, you need a lot of scoring units. And both of us have that. He's playing Directorate, so he can turn his lights into scoring units while they're in the zone. I've got many, many scoring units, so we're both going to be fine in that regard. So it will generally come down to just seizing control of the table in the mid to late game. Very little for scoring from killing things. In fact, I don't believe there's any. It's all about those circles. So you get 2 for each zone, 2 for having 3 or more, and 1 if you've got all of them. Note that the special rule that says does not gain victory points from the ones that were selected, that doesn't mean you're not seizing anymore. It just means you're not getting points for them. So if your opponent is cancelling 1 on your side of the board and you've got all 3, including the one that they cancelled, you are only getting objective points for 2 of them, but you count as seizing 3, so that's where you get the additional 2 victory points from, all right? Okay, having a look at our battlefield, so you can sort of see the circles here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6th one is just behind the trees over there. So we've got impassable buildings, 2 of them, and 3 forests, which of course hindering and obscuring, and several hills. This is the way you want to do it. It's really good to have a combination of forests, hills, and a little bit of impassable terrain. Not too much impassable terrain because the regiments in this game are very large, and you don't want to make the game like totally bottlenecked and trivial down these little channels. Better to have a bit more open space, but you break up that open space with interesting features like hills and forests. That's my take on how to do that. So we're starting off with just the 3 lights that are in the list, 2 crossbows and 1 squires, and moving the crossbows into the forest. They're quite fragile units, and while they're all in the forest, they can all shoot from it, so that's where they want to be. Opponent bringing in one Force-Grown Drones regiment. These guys have the new catabolic node, which actually activates when you kill it in close combat, or it can just detonate for like 8 hits or something crazy. Let's just go back and have a look at the rule for that. Okay, so catabolic node was 8 hits from the flank, but doesn't trigger morale hits. So that's really nice. So they definitely made it closer to being worth taking. Opposite them, we've got the crossbows, wanting to shoot them down, of course, before they reach combat, or at least threaten them as they move into this little circle here with the long-range crossbows. Although, I say long-range, they've been nerfed to 16 inches now, as you guys probably know. On the right-hand side, just galloping around here, behind the hill, of course, using that hill as a bit of cover against the inevitable Leonines and Marksman clones. We've got the Squires, Mounted Squires. Turn 2, Noble Lord appearing with the Household Guard, so just delaying a little bit in the mid-game, and then bringing on the Hunter Cadre and ending with the Squires, because they'll want to move backwards if my opponent has deployed any shooters opposite them, or they want to move forward if there's no shooting threats on that side. So, opponent brings in the unit of Bound clones with the Biomancer and the Ward Preceptor, so they can potentially get up to Defense 5 if they have the Biomancer on them. Opposite that, you've got the Mercenary Crossbowmen we talked about earlier in the forest, and Hunter Cadre moving in behind the Mounted Squires. These guys have the benefit of the of flank, of course, and of course the Vanguard from the Imperial Officer's Warlord ability, so they march 18 inches onto this little zone here, perfect for starting up the scoring train. Over here, so it's just crossbows versus Force-Grown Drones, although the crossbowmen do very well here, shooting down, I think, 1 stand. And then on the left-hand side, the other unit of Hunter Cadre do the same thing, triple march onto the battlefield, straight onto that circle, and you want to start the scoring game as soon as possible. All right, we have the marksman clones appearing behind the building. That's a great place for them because they've got arcing fire. They can shoot directly over the building if they can't see what's on the other side, but they could also use the hill to shoot over other friendly units, and generally that combination of the house plus the 2 units on either side will defend them, to stop them from being charged by a sneaky unit of mountain squires or something similar to that. All right, so here we do have the crossbows going in after the force-grown drones, and on the right-hand side, marching around as far as we can with the squires. The plan here is to get them within... I know the photo's a little bit deceptive because of the angle, but I did make absolutely sure that the corner of this regiment and the corner of this regiment here is a distance of 10 inches, because the squires can move 9. That means if they charge, a roll of a 1 will automatically get them in. That means they hit the flank right before any sort of shenanigans with +1 defense from the Biomancer, or what do you call it, the Bastion from the Ward Preceptor. So if I win the roll in the next turn, these guys will charge. They'll do 3 impact hits, which won't make much impact, no pun intended. But they will do another 13 attacks with a Class 3 and Opportunists, so that will really hurt against Defense 2 or whatever they've got over there. And then, of course, the Resolve checks from the side will be really nasty because the Bound Clones don't have the Mindless Protectors, or purposefully mindless rule, I meant to say, from the Force-Grown drones. So they'll take a bunch of morale checks, and that's really going to cripple that unit. If he wins the roll, I'm expecting him to just walk on the side of the table with a unit of Leonine Avatara, and they'll just gun these guys down. But that's fine. I kind of want to delay that unit as long as possible. They won't completely eliminate the squires. I can keep moving the squires around, just kind of trade them and throw them away. But the risk versus reward here is worth it. Like, the risk is that the squires will kind of tie up the Leonines for maybe 2 turns at the most, but the reward is that you cripple the Biomancer's force-grown drones unit and stop the Bound Clones and stop them from moving onto this zone here. So well worth doing, in my opinion. So that's why we've got the Mounted Squires listed as the first card in the command stack. Household Guard going to be last because we want to wait out any shooting units before we move on to the zone on our side of the table. So my opponent wins the roll, and this little marker here on the circle here is just me indicating that area is locked out, so he won't be able to score from it. So we have the Centaurs moving on. They don't quite get within effective range, and then they shoot at the Squires, killing exactly 2 stands. So then, of course, my first card is the Squire who rallies and then marches over here. Sneakily, though, with 1 stand left, if I win the roll in the next turn, which I'm likely to because when your opponent's won previously, you get the +1/-1 for the next roll, I could just charge into the flank here with my fresh command stand of the Mounted Squires, and that will kind of annoy him because if he just clashes me, it's just 1 guy plus the supporting attacks, might possibly not kill the Squire outright. And if he reforms, he's just sort of wasting more time. So this has really been the plan all along, is just to harass them. Obviously, I would have preferred to go into the side of the Bound Clones, but, you know, you can't have everything go your way. Over here, my opponent, just marching into close combat. So this is a march charge with Burnout, I believe, into the crossbows, and he's just hoping to trade with them to get the Catabolic Node blowing up in my face. Incarnate Sentinels marching on the table with the that avatar, by the way, represents a Biomancer with the avatar projection rule, so they are going to go for the center of the table. Over here, we've got some crossbows, not really in range to take on the Bound Clones, so just sort of chilling in the forest. Next to them, or behind them, I should say, is the Mage. She is arriving in a little cohort battalion of bodyguards next to the Household Guard. And then over here, you've got the Bound Clones moving on to the objective, bearing in mind that they cannot score from this objective this turn because of the lockout marker. All right, Marksman Clones attempting to get some shooting off. These guys are plugging away at something. I believe maybe going after the crossbows in the distance, but couldn't quite get all stands in. On the extreme left-hand side of the battlefield, we've got the Steel Legion using a triple march from Vanguard. Note that in the distance you have a regiment of Centaur Avatara. If they go after the Steel Legion, well, there's a forest there to block the impact hits. If they go after these guys, well, they at least have evasion, and I can then charge in the flank with the with this group of Steel Legion here. So hoping to bully his unit with 2 units. Both of my regiments are slightly lower cost than his one, and with the double team I should be able to knock them out, forcing him to deploy something else in this flank. Otherwise I'm just going to run away with the game, scoring like from 2 different zones here. So that's where it looks at. You can see this little black piece of plastic on the circle here. That's him locking out my zone, so I can't score from this one, but he can score from that one over there with the centaurs. So that is where they're going to have to stay. The thing is, if they decide to charge here or here, he's no longer going to be able to score from this. He's going to have to move in behind there with the Siege Breaker or a Vanguard Clones or something like that. Alright, so my Warlord, the Imperial Officer, marched on the table. We now have the benefit of Art of War, which honestly didn't turn out to be very useful here because I was out activating him anyway. So they're coming in right behind that one stand of crossbows, and then the Incarnate Sentinels are going to be opposite them. And I'll bring in the unit of Knights to help them against the Incarnate Sentinels, although that's probably not going to go that great. Left-hand side here, so we have the Hunter Cadre moving up to get a long-range shot 18 inches onto the Centaurs, and this goes very well. The dice rolls for this are great, and my opponent just absolutely flubs it with his armor saves, and he loses an entire stand of 1 Centaur, which mathematically was not expected at all, because we've got 10 shots here hitting on 2s, then he's saving on 3s, and somehow I got 5 hits and he failed them all, so definitely unexpected, but a huge advantage to me on this flank then with him losing a Centaur. On the right-hand side, we've got a hill blocking off the Hunter Cadre here against the Leonines, so they're not really quite in range to shoot anything, but they're continuing to score here, and that's the main thing that they want to be doing, right? So lastly, we move on to this zone here with the Household Guard. This means that I'm scoring 2 of the zones that I can score from, and he's pretty much got 1 of them so far because the Incarnates haven't actually connected with this circle over here. They haven't quite touched it. So I am outscoring him in the early game by a small margin. Right, so the new card stack, this is for turn 3. The Mounted Squire will go first, opportunistically into the flank of the Leonines, and everything else activates after that. We've got the Hunter Cadre going second so they can snipe more of the Centaurs, and then lastly we've got the Household Guard, because I'm planning on actually marching them right in front of the Biomancer with the Bound Clones, because then I can actually cause them a lot of problems where the Household Guard will easily beat the Bound Clones, and on either flank he's sort of got Siegebreaker over here and Leonine sort of fending off one Squire, and I'll really cripple his scoring if I'm able to move into the mid area like that, and even threaten the Marksman Clones. So, this champion over here, we have the one lone Squire winning the role and going first against the Leonines, and he starts hacking into them with opportunists, and thanks to failed armor saves and failed resolve checks from the flank, he actually loses a Centaur. So this guy worth his weight in gold over here, really harassing the Spires very nastily. So they try to go for a reform, and they try to clash him, but they flub the rolls, and he lives, and it's just turning into a disaster here for these Leonines. On this side, we've got the boys, the Hunter Cadre, shooting against the Centaur again, and again decent rolls, but we don't quite polish off like a full Centaur there, so just wounding them and really egging them on to try and charge me. So in the center, we've got the Marksman Clones going up against the Crossbows, actually, just finishing them off, just making sure they can't screen and provide a roadblock between the Incarnates and the Steel Legion. So the Marksman here just firing across at the Crossbows there. On the center of the board, this is a bit of a weird one because I've got these Crossbows here who were previously facing this way up against the enemy unit, what do you call those guys, the Bound Clones, and I've decided to reform them, and the reason I've done that is because when they reform, they allow enough room for the men-at-arms to march past into that area there, because this is where the Mage is. Excuse me, and then the Household Guard can move in through there. And when I've done that, I've essentially got his Bound Clones up against the Household Guard and the Mage with the Men-at-Arms, and these guys can shoot onto the hill over top of that. So I'm just really setting up the center play where the Leonines still aren't in the battle yet. They're fending off one Squire, and I should be able to sort of crush through here and wipe them out. and the men-at-arms will still be able to tag the back of the zone with the back of their unit and also attack this unit as well, or I could just move the knights in behind them, and that's how things are going to roll through the center. Alright, so with that in mind, on the right-hand side here, we've got the Hunter Cadre just pushing forward and getting a few pot shots off against the bound clones, but not really inflicting any lasting major damage. We then have Burnout being used from the Directorate ability onto the Centaur Avatar. He knows that he can't keep them there forever, otherwise they're just going to get shot. So they march charge the Hunter Cadre. He is using Burnout, so this is a very high-powered charge, and it does wipe out the Hunter Cadre. In fact, I think that he went for a charge clash, a long bomb, and it did work out. So these guys absolutely get wasted here, and the Burnout actually causes these guys to be destroyed, so I don't even have to countercharge with the Steel Legion, believe it or not. So there they are, gloriously charging to their deaths and taking down a unit of Hunter Cadre with them, all in a day's work. So through the center here, we have the Biomancer just getting ready to, do some spells and bits and pieces. Not really sure what was going on with him. I think possibly putting deadly blades onto the marksman clones. Over here, of course, we get the Leonines attacking once again, and this guy reduced to 2 wounds. They still have not killed him somehow. Just unbelievable stuff. All right, so the Mage now moving forward with the men-at-arms able to pop off a fireball. And we have over here the Steel Legion still moving and camping out in front of the Incarnate Sentinels, not quite ready to take them on just yet. What we do is we double march around here, and the plan is to make it so that when the Incarnates charge me, I'll have the Knights coming in the flank, and hopefully that will cause some damage to the Incarnates, probably not very much, but at least some. But if I win the dice roll next turn, because these guys have already activated, by the way, I'll then just charge through and just get the Cleave 2 swing on them and hopefully do a bit of work. On the left-hand flank here, he's brought in his unit of Vanguard clones and the High Clone Executor. They will now be able to score here. And I've got the Steel Legion opposite them, so what I can do is wait for the Knights to help deal with the Incarnate Sentinels, or I can just double march these guys forward and try to sacrifice them. We're not sure what's going to be happening on this side just yet. Alright, so just moving to the side actually a little bit, just to make it easier to go after this zone with them in case we move forward there with the other unit of Steel Legion. So these guys are staying put on the objective. These guys can either move forward or go to the zone. I just want to have them positioned to take either option in future. We then have the Lumbering Beast, the massive and glorious Siegebreaker, coming in behind the Incarnates. This guy wanted to take on the Knights, but they're not on the battlefield yet, so just waiting for that to happen. With this play being made, it seems very clear that my opponent is going to win this center area, especially if he plays his Vanguard clones correctly, while I'll probably win the left-hand flank, given that this is the last thing to be committed here. So that's going to come down to a late-game sort of push where I've got a scoring lead, but he could always turn it around if he makes enough of a breakthrough. So bringing on the Knights on this left-hand flank, I could have put them on the right-hand side, but they're just not needed there. The purpose of these Knights arriving here is that if the Incarnates move around here to take on my Steel Legion, I can then charge in the flank, but I can also be on this zone at the same time, which is important. If I win the roll and I go after the Incarnates and they lose a couple of stands, then the Knights can potentially come over here and threaten this group, and then I can countercharge with these Steel Legion. So just trying to use the weight of numbers to make up for my lack of class, really, my lack of caliber in terms of these units. He's got superior regiments. I've got more cards, more positioning, and hopefully that will win the day. On the other side of the battlefield, we have the Mage going after these bound clones, as before we talked about, and then the last player is to march the Household Guard right up onto this objective. You can see from the back of their stands there, they are touching the little zone, and then next turn he's going to have to either charge me with his bound clones, or I'm going to charge him and absolutely shred him with this regiment, which will also put me on the other zone up front there, and that way I'll have all 3 zones on the side of the board being captured. So with that in mind, our card stack is going to be as follows. We're going to go with the Steel Legion unit first, just in the hopes that the Imperial officer and his regiment can get Bastion up and go after the Incarnate Sentinels before they get obliterated. Second card going to be the Household Guard going after the Bound Clones, hopefully attacking them before they get up to Defense 5. And then we've got the Lone Squire, hopefully able to take down one more regiment of Leonines. We'll see how that goes, and leaving the Knights to last, because they're not currently threatened by anything, and they really want to get a great position for the next turn. This is a zoom out look at the battlefield before we have our crucial turn here, so you can see how important it is for me to win the roll to get that attack off, because the Incarnates are going to obliterate this regiment here. And then, of course, over here, the fight's going to be a lot easier if I can go directly onto his Bound Clones with the Household Guard and capture that. And then the Men-at-Arms could just move to the left there to capture this. And I've already got the other zone controlled by my Hunter Cadre. This fight's basically going nowhere with the Squire versus the 3 Leonines. Through the center, he's going to have his Siegebreaker, which are going to deal with this regiment in the long run. But that might buy me enough time to get the Knights going through there against the Vanguards with the help of the Steel Legion. And if I could eliminate that unit, then he's got no scoring unit for that circle. So he'll have to camp this entire part of the battlefield with just 3 regiments. This guy, these guys, and the Marksman clones. And I should be able to bring something over to shoot at least one of them, and that will hopefully give me the game. So we do win the dice roll, and the horns are sounded, and the Steel Legion raise their swords, and they march in against the Incarnate Sentinels. The thing is, though, that this is a completely unupgraded unit. They have no Drill Master. They have just Clash 3 with Inspired and Cleave 2 swords. The Incarnates are Defense 4, they've got 6 wounds each, and after a lot of hacking and slashing, we really only take down like one guy. So not a great lot of progress there. You can see them doing their best, swinging those big swords. My opponent activating his Biomancer as the first card and going with all of the buffs onto the Bound Clones, and then they charging into the Household Guard here. The Bound Clones, really not the best fighters in the world, and I've got Defense 3 with the Warlord's reroll 6's ability here, and plenty of resolve from the size of the regiment. So we are able to shrug off this attack, losing maybe 1.5 stands. Not much to be concerned about. And then, of course, when we retaliate, we absolutely chop them into the ground with the Halberd blender and reduce this regiment to just 1 stand remaining, which, of course, I can deal with by using the Mage's Fireball or the Hunter Cadre. So this is a very successful combat in the middle. Over here, we have the Siegebreaker acting before the Steel Legion are attacked by the Incarnate. So the Incarnate's going to be free to keep moving after this, but the Siegebreaker moves in through here with Burnout, and of course no impacts from the forest, but with Burnout, he's able to clear out like a whole bunch of wounds here, like 7 straight up wounds from the Steel Legion. Just completely ignores their Defense 4 with Bastion, because he's got Smite, and then of course they fail the resolve checks with Terrifying, and this unit's absolutely obliterated, so they never stood a chance. Over here, hilariously, and this is probably the standout moment of the entire game, the 1 Squire command stand, +1 attack, attacking the flank because of Opportunists and because rerolling flank, he proceeds to rout the entire regiment of Leonines, including the Leonine Prideborn. They just run off the table, leaving him victorious, and that completely clears up this threat. An absolutely amazing performance from the Squires this game, and really just hands this entire flank to me. Unbelievable. Over here, the Mage doing her duty. You can see her shooting a fireball into the right-hand side here of the Bound Clones, able to completely rout them. And then the Men-at-Arms activate, moving on to this zone over here. So I now have 3 zones on this side of the battlefield to really pull ahead on the scoring. Over here, we have the Hunter Cadre moving up onto the hill, staying in contact with the circle, of course, able to fire a long bomb against the Marksman clones, and that's really quite helpful there. I've even got a free regiment here, the crossbows, which can start moving across the table, and the point of them coming over here is they can screen the enemies from coming across onto my zone, but also shoot at anything that's going to be scoring over there. So that's going to be the late game play. So that's why they're moving forward, getting into a better position. On this side, the Steel Legion moving up into a position where if they are charged by the Vanguard clones will no longer be scoring from this objective, and then I can move up the Knights in case I win the roll to go after these guys. And if these guys are destroyed, that should be like game, because then it's just not going to have enough scoring regiments. So the Knights now marching forward, they are taking this other zone here, so I've got 4 of the zones currently. If he wins the roll, obviously I can just be wiped out by the Siegebreaker or the Incarnates. They're both nearby. But if I win the roll, I can go after the Vanguards with either the Knights or the Steel Legion. What I would expect my opponent to do is to activate these guys first to attack the Steel Legion and wipe them out, and then I can charge it with the Knights, or maybe even move the Siegebreaker in the way of the Steel Legion, just something like that. So with the next card to be activated in the next turn, we have to go with the Steel Legion first, because they need to kill those Vanguard clones, and then we go with the Knights, just in case my opponent goes with some other kind of play, but I think the Knights are going to be dead before they can activate under this sort of situation. So, my opponent wins the roll, and he decides to go with the Incarnates first. They charge the flank of the Knights and completely obliterate them, as you'd expect. He's got impact hits, re-rolling resolves from the side. Cleave 2, it's just an absolute mockery here. The Knights go down as expected. But then, of course, the Steel Legion are free to charge the Vanguard clones, who are not currently using Bastion. The big choppers take them down to Evasion 2 or whatever they've got. Let's just double-check that. Evasion 2, Resolve 3, and Resolve 4 on the High Clone, but of course you've got like 16 attacks at Clash 4 here, and you're losing a whole bunch of stands, and then there's resolve checks on them, so they are destroyed. We have the Vanguards moving on to, actually, sorry, I think I may have reduced him to like 1 or 2 stands here. I don't think I destroyed him, but he doesn't have anything else attacking me this turn apart from the counterplay from the Vanguards themselves. So he's moving here with his Vanguard, with his Marksman clones to avoid the Household Guard. The Siegebreaker moving around to camp the zone, that's really quite important. And then on this side of the table, you've got reformations and the Men-at-Arms moving up onto the hill to get the Mage to fire the Fireball, the Marksman. And then the surviving Vanguard clones able to retaliate against the Men-at-Arms here. But the point is that if I win another roll for Supremacy, he's only got 1 stand left there, so that's the thinking. So as explained earlier, the Mercenary Crossbowmen moving across here, what we're expecting to happen is for the Incarnates to turn around, come after this objective, and they should be able to take on this unit here, but if I delay them with scoring by having the crossbows there, moving around, it'll take him so much longer to get onto the zone, and he will have moved off one of the zones on that side of the table, putting me further in the lead. So we've got some Hunter Cadre over here. They're just repositioning. Not really much they can do. And we've got a reform here from the glorious Household Guard. They are going 2 wide and 3 deep just to make it harder for the Incarnate Sentinels to line up against them. With the house being on this side here, he's going to really struggle to get the full 4 stands of Incarnates in front here. And I'll be able to block off with the crossbows. That might even afford me an opportunity to actually charge into the Incarnates with the Household Guard. And they should do some damage. I don't think they'll wipe out the entire unit, but maybe after a couple of turns of me winning the roll, I might be able to do it. So this next turn here, we've got the Steel Legion going first. Again, they need to go first because they are fighting to death against those Vanguard clones. Everything else is irrelevant. It just comes down to that one roll. And this is sort of the look of the battlefield right now. We have the victorious Squire up the top there, hilariously. And we've got these guys able to take either 2 of the 2 zones that are there. They've moved around because this zone has been locked out. But if it locks out the one on this side of the table, I just move to the left here and actually take that one. We've also got the Household Guard scoring here, and before long the Mage is going to move in behind those Vanguards, those Marksmen, sorry, and score this one. And my opponent is going to have to take this one here with the Vanguards, this one with the Siegebreaker, and these Incarnate Sentinels are going to have to move over here to take my one, and that's his only real path to victory. But unfortunately for him, I managed to win the roll again with the Steel Legion, and they obliterate the Vanguard clones, and that's pretty much game. He comes over to clear them up with the Siegebreaker. That easily happens, but we have the Mage blowing up the Marksman over this side, and that is pretty much lights out for them. They can move on to the zone next turn, and we pretty much call it here. He's only got 2 scoring units left after these marksmen go down, and I'm still in control of like 4 different circles here. So if he comes and attacks me, he's just going to be moving off one of his own zones. So a fun little game there between the 100 Kingdoms and the Spires. I remarked to my opponent that I didn't think that either of our lists were very good. I won't be using Art of War again. I think it's just 30 points for something you. It's good. It's nice, but it's not worth 30 points. I think that also until Imperial until 100 Kingdoms get their update, I think it's still worth taking stuff like Crimson Towers, Ashen Dawn, and then just going all in on the Hunter Cadre, the big sort of spread of regiments that are semi-weak, like just the Knights and the Crossbows and this and that. I don't really think that's going to be good until they update the game. Against Wadroon and City-States, they're just going to outclass you so badly that you're going to run out of little free peripheral units, and eventually you'll lose your good units as well. So yeah, the game's not in the best state of balance. I feel like it probably is in a better state than it was in the previous patch, but there are still some issues with it. We might talk about that in another video. For now, just waiting for the 100 Kingdoms update, and just trying to get any games in that I can in the meantime. So stay tuned, and also hit me up on Discord if you want to play on TTS. Always keen for some more games there, but have a great day.